What's up, everyone? This is Tranquil Toys. I got a few figures here. These are all from Bossfight Studios. And we got the Barbarian Skeletons. I got 2 of those. And then the Saurozoic Warriors Brachion figure. It's like a Brachiosaurus dinosaur figure. And I thought both of these were pretty cool. There's different places they can fit in my collection, so I get a lot of use out of them. They also came with some parts so you can swap around with other figures. And then, of course, you can use parts from other figures to swap on to them. I'm not going to spend too much time on the figures themselves. I pretty much want to focus on the different customs you can make with these figures and some of the parts that you can swap over with other figures and what parts work with the figures and what parts don't work. First, I'll just take a quick look at the figures, starting with the Brachion. But the actual figure is really cool, I think. They really pulled off the design pretty well in figure form. Although one negative that I do have to say is that he's kind of small. I would have liked for him to have been, 7 inches. As tall as the He-Man figures, but they did make him kind of small, so he does look a little bit on the cartoonish side. I know his design is pretty much cartoonish, but if he would have been 7 inches, he would have been like a He-Man character or something like that. But now he just looks like a TMNT sort of character. He fits more with that style than the Barbarian style, but I'm still going to use him for my He-Man display because I think he still fits, just kind of a shorter creature or shorter species. And of course, because it's part of his design, he does have a long neck, although he only has 2 points of articulation, pretty much 1 point for the neck. There's a ball joint at the end, so he can tilt to the side that much, and down that far, but then not really up. And there is a ball joint at the head, which can only look down, can't look up. He's already looking straight forward. And the jaw also articulates. And then you can swivel the head on that. And then it does sort of rotate a little bit, not too much. So that's pretty cool. I like how they did that. I think they could have put in a little bit more articulation there. But you do get swivel. And another thing that's kind of a problem is that I think this was glued in there and it came unglued. So you can see there's just a hollow cavity in his neck. And I think this was glued in there, but it came unglued when I was moving it around. Right when I took it out of the box, so I'm not sure if you guys are going to have that problem or if that's a problem with all the figures, but that's the problem that I ran into. And the shoulders are really good. Also, the paint detail is really good too. You got like the skeleton sort of tattoos or paint on the body and on the face, on the neck. That's pretty cool effect. So the shoulders hinge pretty good. It's a nice tight joint, and I think the arms are removable. Another cool thing about this figure is that you can detach the shoulders. So that makes, putting armor on it easier. Also shirts, clothes, things like that also makes it a lot easier. His legs also come apart too. And there hasn't been any stress marks on the joint or anything. And then single elbows, which is kind of disappointing. And the wrist joints are okay. You get the hinge and the swivel. They feel a little bit soft though. And no alternate hands, which is really disappointing. I would have liked to have fists. He does have grip hands for the weapons that he comes with, but I would have liked for, fists. Or open palm hands just for more expressions, pointing hand, something like that. This was $35, and this is the Big Bad exclusive. The other figures are more bright colors, but this is the Big Bad exclusive, which is this all black color with the skeleton tattoo paint. So 35 bucks, no alternate hands. He does come with a few accessories. The waist articulation is pretty good. You got the loincloth, which is soft rubbery material. So it gets out of the way and you can pretty much get as far as you would want with this character, which is pretty cool. You get a lot of expressiveness just from that joint. And the legs go up as much as you need them to go. The loincloth does not hinder articulation that much. You still can get it pretty far up. And it's also floating. I don't know if it's supposed to be glued in there, but it is floating. So that, again, that gets out of the way easily from the leg articulation. You can do the splits, which is also good, and the thigh rotates on that ball joint, which is pretty good. Single knee, again, just like the elbows, it's whatever. No boot swivel. The swivel is in the knee. For some poses that looks kind of unnatural. If you move his knee to the side, his knee is pointing to the right, which is really weird looking. So no boot swivel, but you do get the ankle hinge, and then you can also rotate the ankle on that peg. So I think all the articulation there works well together. There's nothing really getting in the way of the articulation, and you pretty much get as much as you'd expect from this kind of figure, and you can still do some pretty cool poses. I really like this figure. There's a lot of customization options, which we'll get into later after we take a look at the skeletons. The skeletons are priced at $30 on Big Bad, and they come with a lot more. So each skeleton comes with all of the stuff you see here. This is the Barbarian Skeleton. They got a few different other skeleton options that you can pick. And all the gear is removable, so that's really cool that they decided to include all of that there. And everything looks really good on the figure. The color of the bone is a little weird to me. I think I would have preferred a little bit more gray or white color instead of this kind of yellowish color. Nonetheless, it's still a good action figure. He holds poses pretty well, and he also holds his accessories pretty well. And he just looks really cool, you know, jaw articulation. So that looks really cool. So taking all the accessories off is actually pretty hard. He does come with skeleton feet, so you can switch the boots out, so you can get a, you know, naked skeleton look or just a skeleton look. I think you have to heat up the torso to take pretty much, you have to heat up the torso to take everything off, because you could risk breaking it. I've seen a couple different people have it break on them, so that's really unfortunate that it's hard to take apart, and I don't want to risk breaking these figures, so I'm going to heat it up and then we'll go over the articulation. So here's what he looks like with all the armor taken off, and like I said, you have to heat him up. So first of all, the way the figure looks is pretty accurate to what a, you know, regular skeleton looks like, a regular male skeleton. So that's pretty cool how they pulled that off. So you got a ball joint in the head, and the head is easily removable. You don't need heat to do that. Also jaw articulation, it goes that far, which is pretty wide. It looks up that far, looks down that far, and then of course you can swivel all around. Not too much tilt, pretty much nothing. And then shoulders go up that far, and of course they swivel. Elbow, single elbow is kind of a boss fight thing that they're doing. And then he does have a swivel and a hinge ball joint, so you can hinge it up and down, then swivel the wrist and hinge it up and down that way for holding a sword. And then in the torso, he's got two ball joints, one ball joint on top here, which goes that far back, and it does kind of come apart easily. It's because he's still pretty warm, but he does also tilt that far left and right and back and forward, and he also swivels all the way around. And then the joint down here at the bottom of the spine, it is that same joint as the wrist, so you can swivel it, or you can hinge it forward, hinge it back that far, and then you can swivel it and hinge that far down, and not that much up. So you kind of do some weird, funny poses, I guess. So this also swivels in the pelvis, and then when you put the figure back together, you can get a little bit more tilt, not a whole lot, actually pretty much. You can get a little bit more tilting side to side. It's not that much, and that's probably not worth it to do that. And the legs, pretty much similar to the rest of the figure. Ball joint in here can hinge up and down, so you can kind of pivot it on that joint. You got to be careful though. You could stress that peg and snap it. Then the same joint is on the hip right here, so that also swivels up that far, and also swivels really far the other way, so you can kind of break his hip right there, and you can get pretty good range of motion there. It also does swivel on that joint, so you do get thigh swivel there, or hip swivel. Then double jointed knees, which is interesting, and that works pretty well. And then you come down to the feet, goes forward that far, back that far, and then of course it rotates on that. So really good amount of posability on this figure. It does feel a little fragile in some spots, so you got to be careful when you're posing it around and when you're taking off some of the accessories. So you just got to be aware of that, so that you don't break your figure. Now we'll get into the fun part where we can put some different parts, see what fits, see what doesn't fit. So the first thing I want to mention is that skeletons did come with this barbarian helmet. So the helmet does of course go on other figures, and then you can also put other hats on this figure. So there's a baseball cap. It's kind of big, but I think that looks kind of funny, and that gives you an idea of what other things are going to look like on it. A crown. And here's my custom Marvel Legends Punisher, and you can see the helmet fits on him pretty nicely. Any bald head it's going to fit nicely on, so that looks really cool. Doesn't really fit on He-Man's head because he has so much hair. But I guess if you had an extra He-Man, you could heat it up, rip the hair off, then you could put the helmet on. You could put any helmet on. The helmet also kind of fits on the Brachiosaurus. If you put some tack, or if you want to glue it there, that's also something else you can do. Pretty much do that with any hat. One thing that's kind of disappointing, especially with the Barbarian Skeleton accessories. By the way, the stand is really bright, and I don't like the color they chose for the stand. I wish they would have went with a different color. The accessories that they came with are pretty much specially made for these skeletons. So you can see the grip is kind of thin. And so most He-Man figures are not going to be able to hold that. Masterverse figures are not going to be able to hold that. It's just kind of going to fall through and can't get a grip on it. So that's really unfortunate. That kind of reduces the amount of options that you're able to get from these figures. It's kind of unfortunate that you're kind of limited in what you're able to do with these figures, but it does work on some figures. And the accessories that the Brachion came with, he came with this axe, which is kind of lame in my opinion. I don't really like the design they went with this. I would have liked a more traditional looking axe like this one from the Super Action Stuff weapons pack. So that's really not that cool. He also came with a gun, which doesn't make sense. I mean, I guess nothing has to make sense, but I mean, if you're having a barbarian looking dinosaur, why would you give him a gun? That just seems like a dumb design choice in my opinion. But he does come with this cool knife, and he holds that very well, so you can punch people with the handle, and then you can stab them. And it also fits very well with Masterverse figures, so that's really cool. And then for head swaps, it's kind of hard to figure out what heads go well with skeletons because the whole body is a skeleton, so it's kind of hard to figure out what head makes the most sense. So here's a custom painted Red Skull head. That's what that looks like. And here's the Barbarian Skeletor head. So there's what that looks like. I guess that looks kind of cool if you were to repaint this to make it look more like the actual bone color here. So I guess there's something you can do with that. I also made that helmet removable, so that also fits on there too. And that looks pretty cool. And I guess I'll just do a quick size comparison. They are pretty small compared to the He-Man figures, which is really unfortunate. That's really the main reason I wanted the skeleton figures, but I mean, it does kind of work. And the Brachion figure is a little bit closer, but he is shorter, so it does look kind of odd, but I think it kind of works because there was different species in the, you know, He-Man cartoon and the comics and whatever, so I think it does still work pretty well. And here's what the Brachion figure looks like with his armor on, or with his harness and his gauntlets on. So that's pretty cool. I like the paint work. I would have preferred a darker color palette than this green and blue theme that they went with. But the knife holsters in front of the chest, which is really cool. He did have this other piece that came unglued really easily. I guess it's a running theme with these Saurozoic Warriors figure. The glue is not that great, and it was pretty much a part that you can attach his axe to the back. But that was really dumb because it was really flimsy piece of rubbery plastic, and this thing is pretty heavy, so it didn't really fit. And then when I tried to put it in there, I just broke it off, and I don't even know where it is anymore. But it was a pretty dumb way to engineer that, and I don't like this anyway, so I'm not going to put that on him or anything, so I don't really need it. I think it looks cool without it. Okay, and something else just came off the figure, and it was the holster. So I don't know what's going on. The glue they're using just sucks, because that never happened to me before, and it showed no signs of doing that before, and I literally just put the figure down and it fell off. So I really don't know what's going on there. So here's what the harness looks like on the Marvel Legends Hercules body, and it actually fits really well on there. I think that looks really cool. And here's, you know, the other armor parts from the Brachion figure. You can check my review on that for the Masterverse Brachion figure, and you know, everything, the green lines up pretty well. The blue kind of throws it off a bit, but it adds a nice contrast. Still would have preferred that it was, you know, black or a brown, a little bit more realistic looking color. But I think this looks really cool, and definitely opens up a lot of opportunities for a lot of cool customs. So I found this cape from a Marvel Legends figure. That looks really cool on there. So here's the clawful Masterverse chest armor on the Brachion figure, and that looks really cool. An added bonus is that there are those two hooks on the back, which you can put the axe on. It actually fits a lot better. It actually fits a lot better than the way it did on the original harness. Looks pretty cool. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of the axe, so I'm probably not going to do that. And as far as head swaps go, it's really limiting because of his long neck, so you're not able to do a whole lot. But one thing that I did discover is if you use pretty much any snake head, right here I have the Mezco, this Mezco Viper head, and it actually fits on there pretty well. But you have to turn like the neck around. It does fit pretty well, and it looks kind of cool, but it's just kind of hard to pose it properly because the neck just doesn't move enough. So I think you can get that to work somehow, maybe. There's the Brachion harness on him. That looks really cool. Also got He-Man's sword in the back, so you know, other parts similar to this will also work. And here's the other Brachion armor piece, and that also kind of fits. It doesn't really strap in all the way in the back, but it does look pretty cool. Masterverse hands also do kind of fit on the figure. It looks really out of place. Maybe if you were to paint them black, it would make a little bit more sense. And then I just now thought of this. Here's what the Marvel Legends Venom hands look like. This is the movie Venom one, and that actually works very well, so that's really cool. I do have some extra Venom hands, so I'll definitely be throwing those on this figure. And also, Masterverse wrist armor does not fit. His wrists are too thick, so you can't put any of the Masterverse wrist armor on there. There might be a Masterverse character that has bigger wrists that it would fit on, but other than that, I don't know. And as far as putting parts on the skeletons goes, there's not really a whole lot you can put on there because they're just way too thin, and any armor that you put on is going to have to be really small. Like this stuff, maybe you can put like the He-Man Origins figures stuff on the skeletons figures, but I don't have any of those, so I can't really say if that'll work or not. Like, yeah, because this stuff is like way too big, and it's just going to look goofy, and it just doesn't look right. So I'm not sure exactly what would work on here. You can definitely put clothes on him. So here's what clothes looks like on the skeleton, and I guess it does work. I mean, it just looks kind of weird, clothes on a skeleton. Anyways, guys, that's really everything that I had to say about this figure and the different things that I wanted to try on camera. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know which one was your favorite, which fix-up or which custom was your favorite. I gotta go. I'll see you in the next one.